Hello, everybody. Great to see everybody on, and I know we have a robust audience here today, and a lot of great topics to cover. My name is Krish Iyer, and I'm here along with some very good friends at ChannelAdvisor and Google to talk about how we can increase revenue through multi-channel selling. Very exciting topic, a lot of great stuff to cover. But before we get started and talk about our agenda, talk about an introduction to some of our good friends here, and go right into it, a few housekeeping items. First off, if you have questions for our speakers, please put them in the Q&A chat, and we'll do our best to get to you and get to your questions here probably toward the end. Second, the boxes that you see on your screen can be moved around and customized just a little bit. Know that they're not static, particularly if they're covering up any content or anything like that. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, let's go. All right, how to increase revenue through multi-channel selling. First off, we're going to introduce some very good friends of mine that I've been working with for some time now here from ChannelAdvisor and from Google. We're going to talk a little bit about what multi-channel selling is and why you should be doing so. But it goes without saying that there are some challenges to multi-channel selling. But we'll give you some key critical areas and steps to follow for multi-channel success. So with that, let's get started to introduce our two main speakers here. First off, my good friend, John Kennard, that I've been working with for a few years now at Google, Partner Development Manager. Hi, John.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Great. And then second is another good friend, and that's Greg Ives, Senior Product Manager, Marketing Manager for ChannelAdvisor.
Hey,
hi, Greg.
Thanks for having me. I'm just now realizing, looking at my pic, how a year away from the office has really aged me.
You look great, Greg. Don't let anyone tell you different.
Yeah, well, people could say the same thing about my picture where I had more hair, and that wasn't taken all that long ago, so I'm a little self-conscious of it now. But I am Krish Iyer. I'm Head of Industry Relations and Strategic Partnerships for ShipStation. So with that, let's jump right into it. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about ShipStation, little shameless plug. What are we? We are the platform in marketplace e-commerce shipping. Wherever you sell, however you ship, where we have hundreds of selling channels, top carriers, the ability to customize and streamline your order management workflow, and to build brand awareness. I don't want to steal too much from my friends here on the call who are going to talk about what brand awareness means in multi-channel selling, but know that ShipStation has the ability to customize that experience for your customer with branded emails, packing slips, branded tracking pages, and returns. So know that it's a powerful tool and ability to do a lot of things with a lot of partners and get your products to a lot of customers. So what is multi-channel selling? As the name would imply, the idea that can you get your products across multiple channels? But the key here is early days of the internet, a retailer knew that they had to surface their products through their own website. Maybe they also obviously had a physical brick and mortar or click brick and mortar type of setup. But now we see that there is a lot more to it. You have your own direct channel of a website. You have marketplaces, obviously like our good friends at Google. Social media channels, some of them allow one-click shopping, or allow you to make that transaction right there and then via social media. And of course, physical retailers as well, and those traditional click brick and mortar type of channels. I'm getting a note here that the slides aren't advancing, so with that in mind, if that's the case, then I'll switch over to my good friend John Kennard here to see if he can advance the slide.
We're on agenda, so I'm seeing agenda. Is that what you're seeing now, Krish?
I was actually seeing our slide 5, which was what is multi-channel selling. So if we want to skip to that, that'd be great.
Hey, there's our pictures. There we go.
You gotta love live webinars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, we're happy for everyone to join us and come on this journey with us as we slide through the deck.
Great.
All right, so we're
Never
on
know
5.
how this one's going to go.
Where we should be?
Yeah, if we want to advance to the next one, we can keep going. All right. So it goes without saying, multi-channel selling is the idea, can you have that experience across different touch points? But that word touch points is really important because as we'll talk about a little later in this presentation, having that consistency, that ease of checkout that goes with your brand, your product, your name becomes really, really important moving forward. But why should you sell on multiple channels? Goes without saying that you want to acquire new customers and grow your revenue. I think that's an obvious reason. But the reality is that so many consumers may see your brand or your product through one channel, meaning maybe your direct website, see you as a marketplace seller on a marketplace or through social media, and then purchase the product through another channel. And we've seen a lot of examples of that, of folks that were digitally native and then moved into the retail space, folks like your Dollar Shave Club, Harry's, folks like that who did that. So selling on multiple channels is really important, not just to reach new customers and revenue, but to set yourself up for success on future channels, especially when you have a low barrier to entry, like selling on a marketplace versus a channel like a traditional brick and mortar. The final thing that I will say here is the idea that it's a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Too many channels and the wrong channels, and you've diluted your product, and you could potentially set yourself up for some problems in terms of profitability if you have the wrong channels that maybe are taking too high of a bite or percentage of your sale. Too few channels and you're not reaching enough customers. So really that consistency of experience, certainly that we're going to talk about a little later on in this presentation, is going to be really important moving forward. So I think the idea is consistency and using the right tools to surface the right products on the right channels to the right consumer. And then with that, I would like to introduce you to a great channel for selling your products, and that's Google. It's my good friend John Kennard. If you want to take it away from here.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Krish. You know, it's funny, as we were thinking about this discussion, that last slide that you just showed, and I'll swing it back briefly, the idea of low barrier to entry, something about that got my wheels turning and thinking about my own personal e-commerce journey. I'm sure many of you are many years into selling. Some of you may be sort of early days. The thing that really struck with me is that, and this might sound cheesy, but you know, the barrier to entry, whether you're selling or shopping online, has never been lower. I mean, it is really, again, it sounds cheesy coming out of my mouth right now, but ultimately we're in such an interesting moment in the evolution of e-commerce. And what it makes me do is think about the beginning of my own personal journey. So I started in e-commerce in the 2000s, and the work that we were doing, both at PayPal and at Google, was the thing I was trying to do was basically convince large retailers to put an express checkout button onto their retail checkout pages. And I think the takeaway for me, the telling thing about that, thinking back to that experience, was really how narrow it was, right? There was few options. There was not a great way to discover products. And I think it was a really linear path, right? You would basically be funneled into these very large retailers, and you didn't have a ton of choice. And then, so not only was it a narrow experience, but it also was one that was filled with quite a bit of friction where, you know, if the handshake, the trust of transaction wasn't necessarily there. I think one of the reasons behind an express checkout button was to remove friction in the transaction, but also to imbue trust and drive conversion. And I think it's kind of an interesting moment to think about where we were and how narrow it was, and really where we are now. And where we are now is in this incredibly distributed experience where there are really dozens of amazing buying experiences. So Krish highlighted a few of them, but ultimately where customers find your products today is so incredibly diverse and in so many different mediums at the moment. And that trust handshake has been solved, right? The actual process of buying a product, so clicking transact and entering your details and expecting that product to arrive on time, that hasn't, it hasn't been totally solved, but it really has changed where someone will buy a product varies so greatly. And so that means user preference changes fundamentally under this sort of new experience, where a user may say, I prefer to buy from a marketplace, from another marketplace, from a social media site, from a super slick D2C brand built on Shopify, from Google directly. And I think that reality is really what's informing a shift in our perspective. And what Google is trying to do is really democratize and create an equitable platform that's open and inviting. And what I mean by that is, we are organizing the world's information. And similarly for shopping, we're attempting to organize the world's product information. So what we need is full participation. We need as many brands and as many participants in the ecosystem as possible to drive the richest user experience. Now, the other part of that, though, is that in order to service the user, we should be agnostic or not really prefer where that customer is going to buy that product, because ultimately the customer is going to decide what they prefer. And I think that should be a very telling strategy for everyone listening today. If you are narrow, if you are in one single path, then what you're going to do is you're going to reach a certain audience, but you won't reach other audiences that prefer to shop elsewhere, or that when they're going around online and going through the dozens of touch points that they will inevitably touch before they purchase a product, you're not getting into their stream. And so generally, I think our strategy should be yours as well, where the things that you should focus on are rich product data and high order quality, and then getting your products into the path to purchase in as many paths to purchase as possible. Now, that's something that's a reality today because of our partners, ChannelAdvisor and ShipStation. So think of it as the things that you should really be focused on are building great products, building great product data behind that, doing this once, giving it to someone like ChannelAdvisor, and allowing ChannelAdvisor to help you reach each and every channel that the customer may be. And then the only way that that's possible, of course, is if a partner like ShipStation is able to make sense of all of those different channels and homogenize those orders. Because at the end of the day, the things you can really control as a seller are how good is my product, how likely am I to win this impression or this buy box, and then not only if I convert that customer, but how well do I deliver that product? How well am I meeting the customer promise, which is in turn going to get me another customer like it or a return from that same customer. And so again, distribution is where the world is going, and the shift in the mediums is really exciting. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do, and I mentioned this idea of creating an open and equitable platform, we've made some changes in our platform, and I think it should give you a sense of how you need to participate in each channel. So a couple of years ago, if you had looked at a shopping page on Google, the vast majority of the results would be what's at the top there, shopping ads. So someone's paying for a click or paying for an impression to actually drive the customer to their retail site. The challenge there is that while it is an incredibly efficient vehicle, this is not in any way saying anything bad about shopping ads. It's an incredibly useful tool for so many merchants to acquire customers and orders. at the end of the day, it's naturally restrictive, right? There is some participant group that cannot list with us, cannot bring us their products so that we're showing the highest quality and actually servicing the user as well as we can. And so the decision was made at Google basically to shift the real estate a little bit. Now, this is an illustration. This isn't an exact thing, so don't hold me to it. But think of it as shopping ads is retreating, right? They're ceding ground there, and free listings is going to be a more prominent component of our shopping experiences across Google. The three types of free listings: one is an online free listing. So that's a click to your retail site. It looks and feels like a shopping ad, but ultimately it's something that you're not paying for, so you're getting free traffic. There's a click to a local storefront. For some of you that have brick and mortar businesses, that's again another traffic driver, but may not be quite relevant for this audience. And then finally, buy on Google. So some users, some merchants don't have websites, right? If you don't have a website, you may want to consider it. There's all these great store builders out there, and it's a way to acquire a customer. But if you're in the game of acquiring orders, buy on Google is another solution where you don't have to have a website. You have to list your products with us, but we'll effectively drive a free traffic to your transaction. We'll capture that transaction, and you'll pay a very small amount in transaction fees. But I think the takeaway here again is that if we're shifting this and if we're saying we've got to create more real estate, it's really to invite sellers like yourself into the ecosystem. Because if you come in and you bring your products, then again, we're servicing the user. And at the end of the day, that's how we build our business. We think about the user, we service the user. And so this isn't necessarily, again, to talk too much about Google. I really think that the way that we should be thinking about this is distribution across all channels. And so we've sort of bifurcated our world where if you are a retailer with a website, you have levers to pull. One would be free listings, where you list your products with and get free traffic. You can supplement that with an ads product. So think of it as an organic and paid levers or strings to pull. And that ultimately is going to drive customers to your website, right? You're acquiring customers that you can remarket to and whatever else. And then selling directly on Google, again, if you don't have a website, and more importantly, if you want to reach customers who prefer to buy directly with Google because they have their stored value credit card and shipping address and billing address, that's another way to capture the order, capture a customer's order. And I think what's powerful about that is the user will ultimately decide these paths. And if you expand your gaze beyond Google, think of it as each and every other platform is very similar, right? You want to be able to reach those users wherever they are. And I think, again, the folks at ChannelAdvisor, what they're doing is making it so that you can seamlessly syndicate your products and reach those customers wherever they are. And then on the ShipStation side, you're able to consume those orders and efficiently run your business so that you're telling each of those platforms that you make a sale on, hey, I'm a good merchant. You should show me again. You should sell me again. And I think that's the way you ultimately grow your business. Now, I've probably oversimplified this a huge amount, and there's a ton of complexity in running your business. If you want to learn more about Google generally, you can go to merchants.google.com. You can go to our YouTube page, Google for Retail. But I would actually say that the folks on the phone, so Krish and Greg and the teams at ChannelAdvisor and ShipStation, have a wealth of knowledge. They understand our platform, and they understand the other platforms that you're trying to conquer. And so really, they're a great starting point for you to build your business. I'm going to pass it to Greg.
All right. Well, John, that was such great content and so many good recommendations in there. We appreciate that, and we appreciate the little plugs too. So before we hop into the tips and tricks, it is important to understand some of the common challenges that the brands and retailers are up against, and there are a lot. Okay, so ultimately, at the end of the day, the way that we've summarized these, they all come back to the consumer, right? So all right. I want to know, is my screen advancing? Are you guys seeing today's consumers are smart, savvy, and informed?
I think I might be the all-time slide advancer, so why don't I go ahead and move it?
All right. So as we're all aware, consumers are forcing a shift in the way brands and retailers sell online. That's definitely been the case this year. It's accelerated that shift. You know, they're more demanding yet loyal to sellers who get it right. They're impatient but will also take the time to thoroughly research a product before making a purchase. I know I'm definitely like that. A couple months back, I was looking to buy a telescope. Spent, probably 2 of those months researching and looking at models and looking at the various brands. And since it's a big investment, I also was shopping around on the various marketplaces and dealers. And, I bet when it was all said and done that I probably visited 20 plus sites. But this is common now, right? I'm not alone with this approach. This behavior is reflected even in the recent Harvard Business Review study that mentions that 3/4 of customers use multiple channels while on their path to purchase. And it's that behavior, right? The segmented behavior that's complicating the way that sellers operate. In fact, it's not uncommon for us to see brands and retailers simultaneously integrating with dozens of marketplaces, dozens of digital marketing channels, dropship partners, and fulfillment providers. Not only are they connected directly into the various platforms, cross-channel integrations are now introduced, right? Those channels are now communicating with each other and have to be synchronized. So inventory synchronization across marketplaces and fulfillment providers becomes definitely a challenge. You also see inconsistencies with product content and pricing, and that can be a huge challenge no matter what size of a brand retailer you are. Now, to really compound things, each channel usually has their own set of unique requirements for the way that they ingest data. That means your logistics team is forced to understand the nuances of every single channel for which you integrate. Throw in, thinner profit margins. There we go. Throw in thinner profit margins, lack of channel expertise, and a hyper-competitive landscape, and you can quickly see how multi-channel selling gets complicated fast. But since you're here today, you already know it's absolutely critical for growth. In fact, multi-channel and marketplace formats is predicted to generate about 86% of sales growth in the next 5 years. It's not something your business can afford to ignore, obviously. That's why we've prepared a list of recommended steps. Okay, so to hopefully provide some guidance for you and your selling operations, this list could easily have been 70, 80 steps long, but we tried to boil it down and highlight a few that we consider the most impactful. All right, so number one, and this one might be obvious to some, okay, but it's absolutely critical to the success of your operation. Before you can even begin to think about creating a strategy or executing your plan, you'll need to get key stakeholders and internal teams aligned. You'll be surprised at how often this syncs an organization, okay? Your customer service, legal, logistics, sales, marketing, product, finance, all of those teams, every single one of them will play an important role, okay? So even if one is not looped in or decides not on board, it can hinder the entire initiative, okay? It can completely derail it. That's why it's important to designate a point person, okay, like a project manager to oversee and run internal transitions from getting initial buy-in to potentially expanding departments, okay? This person should also help ensure that you're being pragmatic. Just look at the other business initiatives that you have to make, right? You have to do your research before you jump into cross-channel selling. Your internal teams need to understand your market and consumer needs inside and out, plain and simple, okay? If you find out that through this exercise and through this exploratory process that your organization isn't built necessarily for rapid expansion and that this is going to be a challenge, you may want to consider working with a strategic partner or a consultant. All right, and here's a quick pro tip for you. Don't forget about taxation, okay? It can be easy to overlook. I get it, okay? You're over here worrying more about SKUs and listings, not tax laws and nexus. But tax experts, they're going to play a critical role in this process, and they should be among the first people you consult with since you're going to be introducing a bunch of new tax considerations. The last thing you want is develop a thriving D2C strategy only to have it derailed by costly tax audits and penalties. Many third-party sellers that we work with choose to work with software services providers that specialize in e-commerce sales tax. Three that come to mind that are highly recommended are Avalara, TaxJar, and Vertex. All right. So this next one is a mistake I see a lot of brands make, okay, big and small. Expanding selling operations across marketplaces really does require a high degree of sensitivity to any retail partners you may have, okay? Communicating the change early on in the process is extremely important. Why? Well, you're now the competition, okay? And you have to prepare them for this potential disruption, okay? And because if you're not, it can go from a smooth transition to a messy one really, really fast. You need to develop a messaging strategy that clearly communicates your intent to sell directly to consumers and lets retailers know that the expansion, what it means for them, that there will be change and how are they gonna be affected. Now, to help set expectations and build a sense of community, you could consider creating an authorized partner program, right? Or building an exclusive agreement with select retailers. Also, if you plan to enforce a comprehensive MAP agreement, adhere to the policy yourself and use a product intelligence tool to closely monitor your distribution network. This will help reinforce partner trust and show your value as a seller. This is really important. I know this is an easy one to skip, but man, you really want to make sure that you're being considerate of your retailers. All right, moving on to number 3. Selecting the right inventory. All right, so to get started, study your existing marketplace agreements and contracts, okay? Because this will provide a lot of guidance right out of the gate. For example, Amazon often has stipulations that govern which inventory first-party or 1P vendors are permitted to sell directly to consumers via their Seller Central, right? Then they might have a certain set for which can be sold 1P only. And the products that you can sell on Amazon may differ significantly from what you'll be able to list on other marketplaces, okay? So just be aware of that. Next, if you're already selling in one or more marketplaces and you've got some great sales data out there, review it, okay? There's probably going to be some really nice nuggets in there to say, like, okay, these products are performing better than they sell on my marketplace, okay? And so these products might be primed for higher production levels once you list them through your marketplace seller account. Also, if you're able, consider taking a hybrid approach that involves, maintaining a 1P or wholesale type relationship on some products and then a third party listing for others. We see a lot of brands have success with this strategy. So finally, remove the risk of overselling, because that is a huge challenge when you start introducing multiple channels and you have something sell out on one channel versus and it's still available on another. You're going to want to use an inventory management solution to help synchronize that product count, the pricing, and all that rich product data that you're creating. All right. Another pro tip: make the most of product bundles. This is an easy one that's really overlooked a lot, right? So bundling products into a single SKU isn't just best practice, all right? It's a great way to actually differentiate yourself from the competition and, hopefully inspire consumers to make the purchase with you. For example, there will be plenty of times when, a customer will be considering just one of your items, but if they see a promotion for an even better deal with maybe, let's say, like a discounted 3-pack, then there's a good chance that you could even open yourself up to a larger sell than what you'd originally accomplished. So keep that in mind. Look for opportunities to bundle. All right, number 4. These days, look, it's just not enough to list products on marketplaces. It's just not. Okay, the landscape has changed so much. Visibility becomes harder. This is unique. This isn't unique to a single channel. This is everywhere. This is, I'm sure you're already seeing these challenges, right? So to maximize visibility and drive as many sales as possible, advertising is a must. And I see John over here, he nodding his head. I know he agrees. My friends over at Google. And when I say advertise, I do mean take advantage of the full scope of promotional tools and ad types available within each marketplace. No matter which channel you're on, the first products customers are likely to see are the promoted products, right? In fact, it's pretty common these days for the customer to have to scroll down below the fold to even see the first listed product. That's why you need to stake your claim on that valuable piece of real estate at the top of the page and promote your products. Okay, it's just the way it is these days, and you're going to be competing with so many people, no matter the marketplace, that you need to be thinking about this. Next, it does pay to have a system in place to monitor ROI on each channel. It'll help ultimately make those budget adjustments as needed across channels, right? This is where an integrated platform or a dedicated team, especially one with advanced automation, can be truly invaluable. All right. This is a big one. Okay, so this is definitely one of the most common problems we see for both brands and retailers, and that is their product catalog is just a complete mess, right? We see it all the time, whether it's bland product descriptions, inconsistent titles, or just entire fields missing altogether. All right, you're going to need to clean it up before you start selling and sending data across the various channels. That's just a necessity. This information tends to, it tends to be very dense, right? But you've got to go through there, make it thorough, accurate, and as error-free as possible. Okay, it needs to be compelling to the customer. You want that value prop to resonate with the type of customer that you're actually targeting on that marketplace or site. Okay, so think of this as your chance to stand out from the competition and provide all of the information a customer needs to feel okay about buying that product. That's not all. How you feed this product data to the chosen third-party platforms will also make a huge difference. Okay, each marketplace has its own set of specifications. Remember me talking about that, how this is a major challenge. Okay, so they all have their own unique requirements for properly feeding data into their platform, which means you'll also have to have a plan in place for creating and maintaining listings based on the different requirements. So if this is something you're struggling with, and trust me, it's a very common thing that sellers of all sizes struggle with, email me after we're done. ChannelAdvisor can definitely help you out here, okay? So greg.ives@channeladvisor.com, tuck it away. I'm happy to help you with this one. All right, next. This is a popular one, okay? This is also something that it's one of the most important determining factors when selling on marketplaces. And, it's easy to understand why, right? If you set your pricing thresholds too high, you're going to be undercut. You dip them too low, and you risk losing out on potential revenue. I mean, we could have literally an entire webinar around this one topic, but here are just a few basic steps for you to be considering. Before you do anything, and this is important, make sure you understand and adhere to any MAP policies that may be in place. So failing to comply with a brand's minimum advertised price, even if it's to stay on par with other lower price listings, will put you at risk of damaging vital relationships, okay? So please, please, please do your due diligence. Next is product performance, okay? To remain truly competitive on price, you'll need to understand the current demand, okay, and adjust accordingly. But how do you reprice at scale, right, across multiple marketplaces, across multiple sites? Well, sellers with the biggest competitive edge are typically the ones that are going to be using multiple repricers, okay? Because they have these checks and balances that are set up that allow you to, ensure consistency, pricing consistency across all your selling channels. Now, using this approach, each repricer can then act independently to come up with the best decision for a marketplace and then have the lowest price applied everywhere, okay? Also, and this is a big one too, this one seems like common sense, but I know it's also one of those, it's one of the first things to go when you get really busy. If you're not monitoring the competition, you should be, okay? You always need to know where you're losing out. Then once you know which products need more appeal, consider leveraging deals or promotions. I mean, even if it's just like free shipping, it could help you win out, okay? And then finally, another little small tip and trick, and this is just you're going to see a theme here. I love this tip because it's so helpful, is to build on what I said before, okay? Look for areas where you can offer a discounted bundle. It really, truly is a really creative way to stand out and potentially generate more revenue than you would have created before. All right, that brings us to number 7. We're close to the end here. So here's the harsh reality of fulfillment in today's e-commerce landscape, okay? You could provide the most compelling product content and price possible, and it's just not going to matter, okay? It's just not going to matter if you don't get those deliveries to the doorsteps quickly and affordably. And that's just the way that the customers are these days. I mean, I'm like that. We all think about, hey, I want this ASAP. And you could be potentially losing out, okay, if you're not delivering. Fortunately, you have a lot of options to help, okay? Many sellers choose to work with a 3PL or a third-party logistics provider to handle the complexities around, like warehousing, picking, packing, shipping. And so if you're going to go this route, be sure you carefully vet the provider to find the best partner for your unique needs, okay? So think about, product types and warehousing and consumer locations, okay? And be thinking about all of this, all right? And if you're going to be fulfilling from your own warehouse, I'd recommend using a shipping software suite that helps keep you connected to the multiple carriers and makes it easy to instantly apply the most cost-effective option on each order. Okay. If you're looking for a great solution, I'm sure our friends at ShipStation would be happy to help out. Finally, as you continue to expand into new channels, work toward building as broad of a fulfillment network as possible, including marketplace-specific options, such as fulfillment by Amazon or a 3PL with multiple warehouse locations. This is going to help ensure that you're equipped to reach a wide customer base. The wider, the better, right? With short handling times. That's the goal. All right, one last pro tip. In addition to automating shipment tracking and inventory updates, automate order routing to have orders instantly sent to the best warehouse based on customer shipping destination, delivery feeds, product availability, and more, okay? When speed and efficiency are involved, automation will always be your friend, I promise. All right, that brings us to our final step in successful multi-channel selling. All right, so it's creating and maintaining an amazing customer experience. This one also should seem obvious, but I cannot stress how important this is, okay? As your marketplace model expands and demand from consumers grow, so will the need for robust customer support. Again, this is one area you're going to want to take very seriously, okay? Even according to eMarketer, 54% of consumers will stop doing business with a brand if they have a bad customer experience. So what can you do? All right, well, first, find and approach those brand ambassadors that you already have, okay? Encourage those satisfied customers to leave comments and feedback as you work to build up your reviews and ratings, okay? Next, have a system to constantly monitor seller metrics on each marketplace, okay? And empower your employees to take swift action when addressing negative reviews or resolving issues. As a general rule, really make a concerted effort to respond to all customer inquiries within 24 hours. Also, and this is important too, okay? Make the customer questions related to shipments a top priority, all right? While all consumer questions are important, they are, and concerns, that they're gonna have, you're gonna wanna address them all. Missing a service level agreement or an SLA for a marketplace customer can be brutal, can be particularly damaging to your seller reputation and ultimately lead to account suspensions, which none of us want. You should also be as flexible as possible with your return policy, okay? This has definitely become more of a popular one in recent years as well, as shoppers tend to avoid sellers with stricter policies. All right, so that we made our way through, but before we wrap up, I'd like to say a few words about who ChannelAdvisor is in case you logged on today and aren't familiar with what we do. ChannelAdvisor's mission is to connect and optimize the world's commerce. By integrating to ChannelAdvisor's platforms, brands and retailers can better execute against their multi-channel e-commerce strategies, all from within one platform, okay? Our solution transforms your product data, it automates key actions, and optimizes performance across hundreds of global channels. We're more than just a platform, though. As your partner in e-commerce success, we are here to help you efficiently acquire more customers and increase sales. Since 2001, our leading technology and e-commerce experts have helped our clients from leading global brands and retailers to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs grow. And we're also excited to provide a dedicated catalog management solution called Starter Edition. Unlike ChannelAdvisor Enterprise, Starter Edition is tailored to small and mid-sized sellers looking to grow and optimize their multi-channel operations. So if you're already selling on Amazon, eBay, Walmart, buy on Google, Shopify, or BigCommerce, or you're looking to add any of those channels to your mix, we'd love to talk to you about Starter Edition. It's designed to help you avoid overselling by automatically syncing your product quantity across channels, saving you time by updating all your listings within a single spreadsheet, and then ultimately helping you scale your business efforts as you grow. All right, so to wrap us up, to learn more about Starter Edition or to try it yourself for free, 30 days for free, please visit go.channeladvisor.com/starter. All right, so hopefully you were able to find some helpful tips and tricks in there that might be applicable to your business. But with that said, I'll send it back over to Chris.
All right, great, Greg. Great information here. Just to summarize here, I think we had a lot of great information on the whys of why we should be selling multi-channel and what that actually means, as well as some of the pitfalls, some of the things that Greg talked about in terms of selling the right inventory, the relationships that need to be cultivated, getting people on board, the visibility, cleaning up the catalog, your fulfillment, getting the right pricing strategy in place. So a lot of great information, here in this presentation today. And so I don't want to shortchange our friends that have some questions here in the audience. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our moderators here, and we can address some direct questions from the audience. Okay, I could probably go directly to it if need be. I think first question here, this was a question for me, which was on ShipStation, somebody who uses Miracle for a number of sales channels. ShipStation planning to have an integration with them this year? The answer is yes, we are planning to have one very soon. But the next question that we got was on cannibalization. I'm going to pose this one to Greg and John, and I will also have a little bit of my own take on it. And that is, Greg, how do we avoid cannibalization of sales between channels when marketplaces out there almost always need to have free shipping protocols to stay competitive? I'll go to Greg on that question first.
Yeah, so that is an interesting one, and it's gonna. Let me make sure I understand this one. So, sorry, I'm reading through marketplace like Amazon. Almost always need to have free shipping to stay competitive when you can't offer that. Okay. So this is where sometimes you do need to get creative. All right, and this is where that flexibility comes into play. Because like you said, when you start spreading out across multiple channels, some channels are going to be stricter about their shipping requirements. It's going to cut into cut into your margin. Okay, this is where I've seen some brands and retailers, for instance, explore the bundling aspect, for instance. I keep going back to that. That is an opportunity to say, okay, well, while we don't offer that on this site, you can differentiate it just a little bit and keep it competitive, from a pricing standpoint on your website or on a retailer's site. There could also be You could sprinkle in other incentives, whether, if you can't compete on the shipping side, but I'm hesitant to give a very specific answer here without understanding your business operations. Because depending on your mix and depending on which channels, and depending on what you're selling even, I can't be too specific with my recommendations here because I don't want to send you down the wrong path. I'd have to really understand what you're selling, where, and with whom. But it is a great question, and happy to, like I said, follow up with me directly afterwards. And if I can't even answer based off of your guidelines, I can gladly set you up with, a dozen or so people who would be happy to jump in. My email address is greg@ChannelAdvisor.com. And so feel free to reach out to me directly on that one.
Great.
I could probably sprinkle. The only thing I would say, just to kind of piggyback on what Craig's saying, and I definitely think reaching out to the ChannelAdvisor team is absolutely right. But as a seller, if you're thinking about multi-channel selling, I would, one, look at your total landed cost, right? So really get clear about the economics of each channel, and I'm sure you've done that. Two, consider the 3PLs that are mapping to the same day, like the same SLA or the same speed of shipping as say FBA, right? There are a number of companies out there, the Delivers of the world, who are really doing interesting stuff. And then the third thing I would say, just to kind of throw it out there, and Greg, sorry to steal your thunder, again, I would highly recommend talking to the ChannelAdvisor team is think about customer acquisition versus order acquisition. Are you going to be able to sell to that customer again? And if so, what's the value of that? And if the more you can get a sense of lifetime value, the more you can kind of make sense of, if I'm selling it for the same price, am I getting more value from one or the other?
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually think of probably a half a dozen levers that you could pull, even on the fulfillment side alone.
Right.
Going back to order routing, for instance, like finding that distributor, that warehouse that's closest, or, that carrier who is going to be cheaper, and having that flexibility based off of, your inventory and where that customer lives. I mean, there's so many different variables and so many different little levers that you can pull to really make up that revenue loss. Yep.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Greg and John, something here that you won't be able to avoid cannibalization, by the way. There always will be some degree of that. So I do think it's important, and that goes to kind of the beginning of our presentation on multi-channel selling, is that it's a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Having your product out there in too many channels means it's very difficult to manage cannibalization factor, dilution of your brand and revenue, but of course not enough, being an obvious challenge as well. So I think that the key to remember is you are going to sometimes have that cannibalization of revenue. It's just a matter of customer acquisition versus order acquisition, to John's point, and which channels ultimately are a bit of a loss leader, meaning do you view them more as a marketing expense or a channel expense versus actually a sales expense? I think that's important to keep in mind. But yeah, looking at each channel and taking a keen eye on each channel, is it right for my brand, rather than just a buckshot approach, I think is really key here. But remembering, you will have cannibalization. No matter what, as you expand, it's just a matter of how much can you stomach and what's the right level of cannibalization that's acceptable for you to have. With that in mind, let me move on to a question that we got here that is around some of the selling price. And I believe this is a great question for Greg. And that question is, do you recommend selling your products across at the same price across channels? And if you're selling 1P versus different models, how do you control that?
Yes and no. There's so many variables involved with that one, right? Between margins, between again, the fulfillment aspect of it, there's not a clean answer on that. And Ideally, yes. You would love to be able to sell for the same price across all your channels. You would. In fact, there's a lot of repricing technology out there that is intended to, identify where you need to lock in a price on one to become a competitive, and then automatically update all your other channels. Right? We help do that. But then I also don't want to. I really have to understand the scenario and the products and there are a lot of, again, I keep going back to this, a lot of little variables in there that could also sway my opinion, right? Depending on the partnerships that you have, depending on the channels that you're selling on. But ideally, yes. Okay. You would like to keep everything kind of in lockstep, and updated as much as possible. That's the goal. But there are certain situations where that's just not going to be possible.
Absolutely.
Sorry I can't, it's hard to give a concrete answer on that one.
For sure. Okay, so I think our last question, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Actually, hey, John, I do see one about that actually kind of dovetails nicely into, do you mind if I take this repricing question here?
Please do.
Yeah. So actually, to build on exactly on what I was just saying, someone said, you mentioned repricing. Which repricing strategies should we be considering? Okay. 2 to really look into if you're not already. Okay. That we always recommend, we can help out with. We have software that can do it. But if not, just look into this and keep these 2 models in mind. Okay. The first is like an automated or like a competitive pricing strategy. Okay. Where, that is all about, just as the name implies, if you're looking at the competition, if a competitive price goes up, yours goes, or if it goes down, you go down just below it to beat them out. If it raises back up, you're constantly, adjusting based off of your competitor's pricing, right? It's all about winning the buy box. So the key to doing that, again, going back to what I said earlier, would be to align that competitive price across all your channels, ideally, right? So that way, you are in lockstep, no matter if you're on Google, Amazon, eBay, Walmart, et cetera. All right. The second strategy, and this is something that we see, especially around the holidays or after the holidays or around seasonal offerings, especially, and that's velocity repricing. Okay. That's about adjusting prices according to sales trends. So if sales dips, so will your price. Okay. And vice versa. If you see a spike and there's a huge demand, it goes up to adjust with margin. Okay. So this is, like I said, a really common strategy with sellers who might sell like seasonal items, for instance, or like around after the holidays and you got all this inventory sitting on the warehouse shelves. Velocity repricing is a great way to kind of move that inventory.
Great answers. I'll take the last question here. I'll send back over to Greg, and that is, how much is Starter Edition after the 30-day period?
Sure. So Starter Edition, it's $49, okay, but per month. But then there's also a small 2.5% variable based off of your GMV, based off the revenue that you're generating. So the idea is while you grow and succeed and create revenue using Starter Edition, we grow with you, right? And so if you have any questions about that, please reach out to us directly. We'd love to talk to you about it.
Great. All right. Well, with that, I'll go around the horn to my 2 co-presenters here, and then we'll wrap up. So any final thoughts, John?
Just that. Thanks for a great conversation. We managed to have a bit of banter despite this medium. Thanks everyone for joining. It's really fun, and hopefully you learned something about how to think about multiple channels and growing your business.
Wonderful. And Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a lot of fun. I hope we were able to provide some little nuggets, some little takeaways for our sellers out there today. And then if we weren't able to answer your question completely based off of your unique needs and stuff, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. And either I or one of our expert team members at our organization will be happy to chime in and help you out.
Okay, great. All right, then with that, we'll go on ahead and wrap up here. Gentlemen, thank you. It was a pleasure as always. And to our audience, most of all, thank you for joining. It was really a pleasure to have you join us here for this hour.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jen, in the background as well. Thanks for the time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, y'all. See ya.